Welcome to day 3 of the Town Bag Sew Along. In our previous video, I walked you through printing and assembling your PDF pattern. So if you're working from a PDF, you should have that assembled and ready to go. If you've purchased the printed pattern, you're all set. In today's lesson, we're going to be cutting and marking our fabric. Before we get started with our fabric, let's briefly talk about how woven fabric is made. As you can see in this image, woven fabric is constructed by weaving horizontal weft yarns over and under a series of vertical warp fibers. This action is done on a loom. The horizontal weft yarns run along what we call the cross grain, and the vertical warp yarns form the straight grain. At either edge, running along the length of the fabric, is the selve edge. This is a tightly woven edge finish created during manufacturing, and this is what you'll align your pattern's grain line with. Now, as far as pre-treating your fabric, typically when sewing you'd want to pre-wash, but we're going to do things a bit differently with the town bag. When you pre-wash, you're removing any sizing added to the fabric that adds stiffness and also softening the fibers. Since we want the bag to stand up on its own when it's completed, you do not want to pre-wash your fabric. Next, you're going to want to give your fabric a nice press to get out any wrinkles before you start sewing. Marking and sewing on a nice flat surface is always the most accurate way to work. The next step in cutting your pieces is laying out the fabric. This is pretty straightforward. First off, you're going to need to determine the right and wrong side of your fabric. If you're using a printed fabric, this is easy. The printed side is the right side. Here you can see printed side, and the wrong side, there's no print. If you're using a solid canvas, finding the right and wrong side is a bit less important since both sides look identical. If you can't tell which is the right or wrong side, then all you have to do is pick the side that you like best. When doing this, make sure that you mark one side of all your cut pieces as either the right or wrong side to avoid confusion during the sewing process. For example, you can place a chalk mark or a piece of masking tape, safety pin, something like that, on the right side of each piece to make sure that the final project has the right side facing out consistently. To trace, I use either a marking tool with a chalk wheel, a fine point mechanical chalk pencil, or a plain old number 2 pencil, and that's my favorite. When cutting, you want to cut off the lines that you've marked, so you can use anything that doesn't bleed with no trouble. So here we have piece 1 laid out. We're going to make sure it's on grain. Slightly off, adjust, and then I'm going to weight it down. It's hard to see, but if I'm tracing around, then I get to a point where the notch is cut out. I just make a little mark to the outside and then I'll snip into the fabric a bit there. So then I'm going to do my little outward mark. Continue tracing. Another notch. Oops. Now within this pattern piece, there are a lot of little match points that we need to mark. But you'll notice some are marked on the right side and some are marked on the wrong side. So I'm going to mark these after I've cut my fabric piece out. So now we're going to remove our weights. Set our pattern aside and we're going to cut. You can see here are the notches. I'm just cutting a tiny little snip into the seam allowance. The seam allowance we have on the town bag is 3/8 of an inch. So you can cut 3/16 of an inch into the seam allowance and it won't show on any of the seams. So just do that. And if you're a rotary person, you can absolutely use a rotary cutter for this part. If you're going to snip into your notches, I would recommend not doing that with a rotary cutter unless you are a lot more accurate than I am, which probably most of you are. I'm not super stellar at the rotary. I've always been more of a scissor person. Now here, cutting in. And since these notches are within the seam allowance, you could just mark on the pattern rather than outside the seam allowance like I did, because you won't see them once it's sewn, so it doesn't really matter. Okay, now here we have our cut piece. So I'm going to take the pattern and lay it back over top, aligning all the edges, and I'm just going to weight down the center. So you'll notice we have the wrong side facing up. So we're going to mark the inner pocket placement, which says mark on wrong side. For that, I'm going to use this pink mechanical chalk pencil. Just going to mark right in each point. Remove the pattern piece. And you're probably not going to be able to see these, but here, 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 and here. Now flip the fabric piece over. And we're going to realign the pattern with the fabric piece. Weight. And we're going to mark everything that says mark on right side. So we have the outer pocket placement and 4 strap placement markings. So I'm just going in on each of these. And if you can't see your markings at any point, it's not a big deal. You'll always be able to remeasure because the match points are all used while the bag is still flat. So you can always lay this back over top or measure the distance from the edge to a match point. Once you have that done, you can remove your pattern piece. Now, unfortunately, due to the nature of filming, it is hard to see the white mark on the fabric. So I've put a pin in each mark so you can see how that looks. Now you're going to cut out pieces 2 and 3 the same way that we cut out piece 1. Same tracing, same marking, all of that. In addition to fabric, you're going to need the webbing for straps. You'll need 2 of those. So if you have bought your own, we have this pattern piece you can use to cut your fabric or your webbing. I have the webbing from our kits. Those are pre-cut, so all you need to do is mark the strap placement points. We're going to wait on the rivets for now. We'll mark those later while we're sewing. So and this will be on the front of your bag, so make sure you're using something removable. I wouldn't use a pencil for this part. Okay, so you can see here our pink spots. You're going to mark the other strap as well. And that's all you need to do for the straps right now. Okay, the final thing that needs to be cut is the cord. If you've purchased our kits, they are already cut into 2 pieces for you. If you didn't, then you purchase 2.5 yards of cord. So what you're going to do is you're going to fold that in half and cut it into 2 pieces. Okay, so that is it for today's lesson and for the prep work. In our next lesson, we'll be assembling the main body of the bag and attaching the straps. So make sure you've got everything cut and marked before then. I'll see you back here for that lesson, and if you have any questions, let me know in the comments below. Make sure you're subscribed to our channel so you don't miss any video updates. Bye-bye.